Hello, everyone. Good evening. We are live. I'd like to welcome everyone to another episode of Heart to Heart with Bree. Richie, please introduce yourself to the viewers.
Good afternoon, viewers. I'm the Emperor. My given name is Richard Kaur. That's what they gave me. I am the Emperor.
All right. Well, we'll be discussing self care tonight. And what role do you play in self care? So, Richie, my first question to you is what is self care?
So, self care, as defined by me, is the act of being purposeful and deliberate in taking the necessary actions for the sustenance and development of your personal health and well being. It is also equally important that you are purposeful and deliberate in avoiding actions that harm your health and well being. My queen sister Juliet talks about the eight dimensions to wellness, and I want to give her credit for that. I want to say pretty sure, but I'm sure she's not the first person that came up with that, but she's the first person that introduced me to this. And those eight dimensions of wellness, or the physical space. So we maintain our physical wellness through obviously exercise and proper nutrition, and proper sleep as well. The emotional piece, that's understanding your emotions and developing coping mechanisms to manage them, and seek support when you need to seek support.
Yes.
The social piece, she talks about the social piece, and we know no man or woman is an island, and we need strong relationship and bonds with others to contribute to community. We need that social feeling, right? um Intellectual is the number four on the list of eight, the eight dimensions of wellness, right? So I think of that as just always being open to learning and even unlearning stuff, as you expand your knowledge, and stimulate your mind. Number five on that list is occupational, right? Finding a purpose, something that brings you gratification in what you do. Create and also creating a balance between your personal space and your family space with whatever that is. Number six is the environmental piece, right? As a Rastafari and myself, I like the term nature does it, right? I appreciate love nature, having a respect for nature, I protect nature, find joy in it. If you notice the people in the rural areas, they're normally more calm, contented, seemingly healthier than those of us who have to traverse the urban spaces. Um, Number seven, she talks about the financial aspect of it, right? This one I have a little different take on it myself, because the way we chase financial gains, today, I think might be a little bit destructive to our self-care more than enhancing our self-care. We understand the need for finances, and the take I have on it is more so, balancing your needs to make sure you're living within your financial realm, so it doesn't become a burden, or you're in debt to try to maintain a certain financial standard. And then last but not least, I'll say save the best for last in these eight pieces is the spiritual piece, right? And it's, basically understanding your purpose, your values and your abilities, knowing that you're a part of greatness, right? That has always been, always will be, and you're not limited by the physical, right? Being mindful and understanding of this greatness, your greatness. That's the way I think of the spiritual piece. So, um, self care to me, uh, is that wrapped in a nutshell.
Yes. It's when I think of self care, and I love how you put that, you know, I definitely think of the mind, body, and spirit connection,
Mhm.
and I'm glad you mentioned the spiritual aspect of it because that's been a major part of my self care journey. Now, I have been back in therapy, which has been great for me because it's definitely helped me, you know, get my mind clear and help me work out a lot of negative emotions and get myself back on track. I will say the biggest part that has been missing is the physical aspect of it. I have not been as active as I used to be. I have a desk job. After COVID, I just got in a a whole different mindset, and I am starting to feel it. And I'll get to your Wellness Wednesday checkup in a minute because I just love what you're doing. I'd like to welcome Mikey. Thank you so much for tuning in, Mikey. So, why is self care vital? Why is it so important to us, Richie? Emperor. I apologize.
That's okay, Bri. No, I think self care is vital because at the end of it all, it is all up to me. It is all up to you,
Yes.
right? So as you sit there and talk about, you get into that spiritual place and you're opening up to therapy and all that. It's a physical piece that you need to now, step up. I'm saying that because I think it's all up to you, right? It's all up to
Yes.
you. That's the name of my
Yes, you're
group. That's the
right.
name of my YouTube channel. It is literally all up to you because at the end of the day, yes, there are doctors and there are therapists and there are counselors and there are, they're there to diagnose and recommend treatment courses, right? But you have to accept it and do it,
Yes.
right? Um, it's an act of self-care that will lead you to go see them in the first place, right? So yes, they're there. Yes, you're going to see them, but you have to want to go see them. You have to make that decision to
Yes.
see them. And when you
Yes.
go and see them, whatever they recommend, you have to accept that, okay, this is what's going to get me to where I need to be. And I am going to put the work in to get to where I need to be. But also recognizing and acknowledging that if it is difficult, you have that support system that you can always count on.
Yes, most definitely, definitely. And I will say, I do believe it's vital because I think it's so easy to get in that mindset of, you know what, I'm just too tired to work out. I just don't feel like doing this. I just don't feel like doing that. I think that's where we get to that place where we become stagnant and then we wonder why. There will be some sacrifice sometimes. Maybe you'll have to sacrifice a little sleep. Maybe you'll have to leave that TV program out at night before you go to bed to go to sleep a little bit earlier. But I like what you mentioned about like it's like learning new things, knowledge. Like I love to watch documentaries and I love to read. And these have been lifelines for me. So I'd like you to touch on that, Richie, about learning and also taking the time to, do what is right, get the sleep, get the knowledge, things of that nature.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you mentioned it like it's things, like you and I were having a discussion just before we get on here
Yes.
about how there's nothing new under the sun, really. I mean, there's no new information being shared here. Sometimes it's just good to hear it from another person's perspective and just to reinforce it to yourself. So as you talk about being disciplined to, cut the sleep or, cut whatever else is, there is a finite amount of time within the day. So what is it that is important to us? What is it that matters to me? And the first and most important thing that has to matter is you, right?
Yes.
Yeah, myself, I do have a job, right? And I have great responsibility on my job. I'm in a leadership role on my job. um, None of that will matter if I'm not well, right? And I know this now from what happened to me previously. So it doesn't matter if I'm going to be late for that job. I'm not going to miss my exercise. I'm not going to miss doing the things I do. Like it's a pleasure for me to get up in the morning, and get Floyd and Bridget ready for school and work, and that's preparing their breakfast, looking about his uniform, doing the things that I know needs to be done, and I'm not going to skip out on that just because I need to run to a job. I go running. I'm not going to skip out on that because I need to go to a job, because that job will always be there. I need to be well. So it's about making that decision as what is important to you, because at the end of the day, everything else goes on. The job stays, everybody else moves on. And if you're not well, then you're the only sacrifice.
You know what? And that is true because I tell you what, I think some level of discipline has to be involved. It has to mean something to you. You have to want it. I
One
think it's just like I mentioned to you, turning 62 on Thursday. I
birthday.
was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm 62. All of that was going through my mind. And it's like, where did the time go? And then it's like, I'm looking in the mirror and it's like, I can see how I've aged. And, I was a little depressed. And, you know, one of our schoolmates, Arlene Garrick, she's written a book. And I tell you, I read her book and it just changed my whole perspective. And
Mhm.
I said, you know what? I have to change my mindset and I have to, re embrace, the physical aspect because I've taken the time for my spiritual well being, my mental well being, but the physical part of it, I let it go and I am feeling it. But I realize that it's just to make the time and the effort, and Lloyd McPherson is saying discipline.
Oh yeah.
Discipline is so important. I remember when I was disciplined, when that clock went off at 4:30, I never gave it a second thought I would jump up. But it's
Right.
like now when my alarm goes off at 6, it's like, damn it, I don't want to get up.
Yeah.
So trust me, it's like, how badly do I want this?
Right.
So what you're saying, Richie, is 100%. And now I have to tell you, I love what you do on Wednesdays. You have your wellness Wednesday check. I would
Yes.
like you to talk to the viewers about this. Now, I am honored to be on that list. I am so thankful when I get the videos. Sometimes they come at a time when they are truly needed. Please share with your viewers about this.
Before I do that, I can't say how many people contact me, individually, not necessarily in the group, to say this is timely, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to make it clear for anyone, watching, that if they want to be a part of this Wellness Wednesday check, we're open, because it's about community, it's about people, it's about our brothers and sisters. So the Wellness Wednesday check is just a way for me to check in weekly with, my great Black kings and queens on the state of their wellness. I usually share with them my state, whether I'm well or I'm unwell, right? And I encourage them and remind them of the things that they can do to get well and to stay well. I also encourage them to remember to care for our brothers and sisters who might not be so well, in the moment, if they have the capacity to do so. I don't want people to take things on that they can't take on, because when we're trying to care for others, we're taking that on ourselves as well. So I always caution, if you have the capacity to do so, please, please remember to do that. Um, as I said, I have a WhatsApp group of about 80 persons who I share this with each Wednesday. And also, close friends and family members who might not be in that WhatsApp group, like yourself. You're not necessarily in the group, but I do share that with you each Wednesday. And it's essentially just a check in. Hey, how are you doing? Just to know that, someone out there is checking on you, and I'm genuinely doing that with a space of love and genuine care. Because what that does for me as well is, as I'm checking in on people, it is helping me to remember that, hey, make sure you look after yourself. There are a
Yes.
lot of times making those videos to put out and I'm not in a good space. Last Wednesday, for example, last Tuesday was horrible for me. Tuesday night was a horrible night for me, Tuesday night. But I made it through, thankfully, again, to the support system that I have, specifically with my brother and, my queen, Bridget. They helped me to get through that night. And I still had to get up and go to work the morning. And I got to work that morning. And as you might have remembered from the video, lost one of my colleagues in work, not knowing to me at the time. So I got up and make the video thinking, listen, as bad as it is for you, it can be worse for others, right? And what you do, you've seen how people gravitate to it, how it helps people, how people look forward to it, and how it helps me personally to, just get it out. When you're talking it out, you're talking it to yourself as well. So that is my Wellness Wednesday check. And, that's something I intend to, keep doing, and, as many people as I can reach. I was just listening to a Chronic song, and I'm hearing this line for the first time resonating with me, a song where he talks about, he's a legend that nobody, talks about, and he says, look, if one person remember my name, then I've done good. So keep
Yes.
doing that.
Yes. I appreciate the videos that you send out every Wednesday. I work from home and when the videos come in, it gives me the opportunity to take a couple minutes. You know, you remind me to take that breather. You're reminding me to, hey, take care of yourself. Hey, how are you? You know, but what I appreciate, Richie, is when you're not doing so well that you share that, because you are giving us, as your friends and family, the opportunity to reach out to you. And
Yeah.
that's how I believe it should be. And I appreciate that you allow yourself that vulnerability. And I would like you to address that in what has this done for you being able to embrace your vulnerability?
Well, it has freed me. It has freed me from, the scope of judgment. It has freed me from, that, oh, you don't want people to know what's going on because of what people might say, think, or feel, right? I am free because I need help and I'm reaching out for help. And it also helps me to paint a reality in terms of a picture for people, because most times when you get to these motivational speakers, or you know whomever putting content out there for people to consume. I hate words that are preceded with the term con, but um, you find that it is all properly edited and pictured in such a way of perfection, right? And the people who you're reaching, they don't know what that looks like. With all due respect, I'm not saying it to be demeaning to anyone at all, but
I get it.
struggling and you're suffering in a deep, dark place, right? That perfect rosy picture doesn't resonate with you at all. So when we can show the reality of what we're going through, right? Like I talked to you about my run this morning. Like people see, oh yeah, you run 7 miles, you run 6.5 miles, but I really struggled this morning.
Hmm.
I had to stop because it was really difficult.
Yeah.
And I shared that. As I stopped, I shared that. I made a video to share that. I like, listen, I'm trying to run 6.5 miles, but here I am 3.9 miles in, and the sun just got high,
Yeah.
and I'm not hydrated properly, and I can't go on. I need to stop and catch my breath for a second. So that being vulnerable helps me to share the reality, the true picture, so that people could see that it's not just rosy. It's a journey. There are thorns along the way. There are roses, but there are thorns along the way too, and we have to navigate it all. And the way to
Yes.
navigate it all is, if you can't, you know, do it all alone, is asking for help.
And I think that's a powerful thing. I think when you get to the point where, you know what, I'm struggling today, being able to acknowledge that, not burying your head in the sand, not sweeping it under the rug, you're smiling with the world, everything is okay when you're dying inside. I think you do yourself more harm than good. So like you said, when you talk about it, when you articulate those words, when you say, I'm feeling sad or I'm struggling, I'm not having such a great day, I think then you are setting yourself free, as you said,
Yes.
because you're allowing yourself to face your authentic self, your true emotions, and then you're able to move on to the healing. I mean, what would you say on that?
Oh, definitely, most definitely. And then, as you said earlier, it invites those in your circle to accept and to see and to know that, hey, my brother or my sister here needs some help, and then they reach out. I mean, Cedric, who well, like
Yes.
we connected not long ago, and I'm sharing with him what happened to me on Tuesday, and he said, "Hey, don't. I'm glad that you had Andrew and Bridget, but remember, you have me as well."
Yes.
So if it gets tough and you can't reach them or you need additional resources, I'm here as well. So to your point, not only does it free you from that, but it also alerts your inner circle, or even your outer circle, that hey, there's a king up there that needs some help. I'm going to go help.
And that's a great point. And I'd like to say that if you are really struggling and you're embarrassed to talk about it to your friends and family, then you may want to question who you have in your circle.
That's
Because
right.
I think when you have the right people in your circle, that should be the least of your worries. You should know that you could reach out freely and not worry about being talked about or being embarrassed because of what you're going through. So if that's where you are, there are some people you just may have to cut loose. I mean, would you agree on that, Emperor?
Oh yes, 100%. I would agree on that, because again, to your point, your friends should be, and your close circle should be about your well-being, the best of your interest, right? So if you're not well, they're the ones you should be able to run to. If you're not well,
Yes.
they're the ones who should put a arm around you and help you in whatever way they can, if they have the capacity, and if not, lead you in that direction, or help you to that space where you can get that necessary help, not necessarily bash you and say, oh, he's this or she's that, or can you imagine he's this, or can you imagine she's that. Not make it a topic of conversation, but actually be there for you. Oh, I see our queen sister Juliet popped up there. Oh,
Yes. It's saying, hi, Richie. Hi, Bree. You are a genuine role model, unpretentious. You are making a difference. All beginnings start with a single step. Get onto the rails when you are struggling. Crawl or wobble if you have to, but just keep going. And great job, Richie. Thank you so much for that, Juliet. And we both appreciate you very much. Please know that. You know, and let me ask you this, Richie. How important is it my friendships, my connections, my relationships, they should feel safe, in
yeah.
my opinion. And if they don't feel safe, that's when I know I can say hi to you, but I'm not going out of my way to connect with you because it's not an authentic connection. How important is it for you to feel safe within your connections?
It's one of the things, and I mean, not just because Juliet jumped on, but as you know from the last time we were on, how instrumental
Yes.
is in my journey, right? Like she is such an angel in
Yes.
reality. Like she is just awesome. And one of the first things she encouraged me to read is an empath's guide to survival, right? Because she said, Richie, empaths, you take on everything, like I mentioned earlier.
Yes.
When you try to help people, you take that on yourself, right? So, and you never want to say no to people. Like everybody who needs you, you show up for them, you be there for them, you want to do for them. It's not necessarily the healthiest thing because oftentimes, well, I'm not gonna say oftentimes, but sometimes it's a one-way relationship.
It's
At
true.
your point, when you find it to be a one-way relationship and it becomes draining more than it becomes symbiotic, then you really do need to pull away from some people. So that reading that Juliet and introduced me to by Dr. Judith Orloff, it enlightened me and opened my eyes, and I've shared it with a lot of people actually who I've seen similar traits in. That listen, great that you are who you are. However, for you to stay who you are and survive and thrive, you need to probably read this manual so that you can be
Yes.
yourself as well and not be just drained by these people who you're trying to help.
And like you said earlier, knowledge is a part of this self care. Because if you don't know, then find a way to know. You know, the books, the videos, therapists, the positive friendships out there. There are ways to learn. So I think if you want the knowledge, it's there for the taking, but you have to desire it. She said
Mhm.
the Empath's Survival Guide by Dr. Judith Orloff. I'll definitely have to add that to my library.
Oh,
So I have
definitely.
to ask
Please
you
read.
next, Richie,
Mhm.
what do you do for self care?
Well,
What
there
does
are
a
a few.
typical day look like for you?
Well, a typical day is not a real thing for me because it fluctuates. But like I said, I know
Okay.
there's things like that I have to get accomplished, that I want to get accomplished, right? Because I always say the only thing that I have to do if I want to go from one moment to the next is breathe, right? Everything else is a choice; it's optional. Um,
Yes.
but I do look forward to getting Floyd and Juliet, Bridget off in the mornings. So I get up, I make the breakfast, I do my running, I do my if I don't have time, if I feel like, look, if I go running, and especially now in our personal circumstances, we're down to one car, so like I have to literally drop them and then go off to work. So if I'm running short on time, I just drop on the floor. I do push-ups, I do sit-ups, I have my 30-pound weights, I do something, but I am going to do something. I am not going to run to look after others without looking after myself first, right? Another thing I learned from Juliet and Sister Sharon, that is another great queen that's a part of my journey, is the way I eat, the way I nourish my body. So I don't necessarily eat before 12, so I'm not worried about getting stuff for myself, so I could use that time to look after myself in a physical way, to look after others, to make sure that they're well. But typically for me, I got to get mine in before I do go out and get, you know to do others. And this is a now thing because this hasn't always been the case. For me, looking after other people would always precede looking after me. But now, yeah, self-care, it matters to me now more than it did in the past. So, it's not knocking anyone who's not yet at this space on their journey, because everybody has to run their own race.
Yes.
Everybody has to take the journey at their own pace, right? And there are steps you necessarily can't skip. You have to go through the steps, right? I am here now. I wasn't always here.
Right. No, I totally get it. I can tell you that for me, it's like I start my morning off with my devotional. That's very important to me. I do it again in the evening. I do my weekly therapy session. Then there's a couple days a week that I do workout, but then I realize I need to be more consistent now and I need to step it up because I do like the mind, body, and spirit connection. I think when you've worked in all three, you feel more balanced. And I think it's really important to have that feeling. And I can tell, like, if when I'm lacking in one area, eventually it affects the other areas. So I do think it's important to be consistent. And I have to commend you, Richie, for your consistency because like I said, every Wednesday I can depend on that video. you know I think that's a brilliant thing that you're doing because you're reaching out to others, but you are making yourself a priority now. And that's one of the things that I am learning, that what, I'm tired of putting myself on the back burner. It's time for me to take myself off, and it's like time to really focus on myself. So once again, thank you for what you're doing. And for those out there, if you want to ask, the emperor about, the wellness check, you might want to start that with your circle of friends. Reach out to him and he'll be able to lead you in the direction that you should take it. So now my next question is, how does self-care enhance our lives?
Well, I will say it like this, right? Think of it like a motor vehicle, right? Those of us who have a vehicle, right? We change the oil regularly, right? We check the brakes, right? We get regular tune-ups, right? We wash it, we get it detail, right? We give it a new paint job or wax it if it starts to look dull, right? All because we want to keep it running properly, right? And looking good.
Yes.
Self-care enhances our lives in a similar way, right? It keeps us running properly and looking good, right? So all the things that we just talked about before, right? If we do those things for ourselves, right, it will keep us in a good space, right? If you are spiritually in tune, you get your mind in the right space. I think the body will follow once those two things are aligned in the right space. The body will follow. You'll start to nourish it properly, right? You'll start to entertain only positive thoughts, as we talked about earlier. Cut off those um, one-way pull relationships that doesn't really add anything back to the cup. Sister Juliet always say you can't give from an empty cup.
True.
So once you start to take care of yourself in those ways, right, it you will be enhanced, you will be running better, you will be looking better, right?
Yes.
So yeah, that's how I feel self-care enhances your overall being.
Yeah, I think what, you feel more at peace. There's a contentment that comes with it. And I think it just encourages you to continue to take care of yourself. So yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely the way to go. My next question
One of the
is,
things, before you move
go
on,
ahead.
Bree,
That's fine. That's fine.
one of the things that and I got this again from our sister Sharon, right? As we talk about just educating ourselves, right? As I'm being on this journey, quite clearly, I'm educating myself as to what's happening to me,
Yes.
why it's happening to me, and how can I, manage it, get past it, right? So, Sharon and Juliet, are two of the ones who've introduced me a lot to a lot of literature that are German. It's their field, right? And this one, The Body Keeps the Score.
I
Brain.
have that. It's a good book.
Yeah, right. We talked about this the last time we were
Yes.
on, right? So it helps you to understand, a lot of what's going on with you, right? So I mean, you know, I understand my need for that connectivity, if you will, right? To always be, so my self-care always involves other people, or a lot of it involves other people, right? um I'm the middle king of three. I have one king brother before me, I have a king brother that came after me, so I've always been in the midst of other people, right? So even just reaching out to other people, even just to say, hey, how are you, helps me to feel better about myself. And I understand
Yes,
that that is not just flippant, but that is who you are. Your body has kept that score, right? So
it's
unless
true.
until you figure out a way to change that, that's who you are, and it's not necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on that one. I do. My next question is, what are the signs of a lack of self care?
Well, I think the most obvious sign is illness, right?
Yes,
You will get ill if you don't, take care of yourself, right? So when we stop or do not participate in self-care, right, we do get sick, right? And it will not, if we do not make or change, if we don't change anything, make it better, we're going to end up dying, right? So, I mean, it sounds blunt, but it is true. If we
it's
don't
true.
take care of ourselves, we're going to get sick and die, right? So you find that we start to become obese, right? We have debilitating illnesses like diabetes, high cholesterol, high blood pressure, cancer, and all these other diseases because we don't eat well, right? We don't exercise, we put toxins in our bodies, we drink, we smoke, right? If we do all of these things and we're not taking care of ourselves, I mean, there's one thing that's going to happen. You're going to get sick, and you're
It's
going to
true.
die.
It's true. I mean, you look at the amount of people who are getting sick, who are not living a life of quality, people who are, I mean, like you mentioned, obesity, diabetes, and all these things. When you think of like not getting enough rest, a lot of people are sacrificing sleep. And I think that sleep is vital. I remember going through a period where I had insomnia. It was the most miserable time of my life, not being able to sleep. I was lucky to be able to sleep 3 hours. And then if I would wake up, I would be upset because it would be hard to go back to sleep. And it affected my thinking. I felt as if I was going to have a nervous breakdown. It was just a horrible place to be. I think when you're not getting enough sleep, it affects your whole life. So I think that sleep is definitely an important part of self-care. What's your take on that?
Oh, 100%. Certainly, you're absolutely correct. And I know where you live because I lived there, right? And I still live there every now and then. Tuesday night, I live there, right? One of the things that I find when I'm in that space as well is that it's almost like I'm afraid to go to sleep. Like I'm
Yes,
falling asleep, I'm jumping back out of sleep, right? And that is not good because we do know how important rest is to the body, right?
yes.
That's when you get to regenerate and become new again and become whole again. And if that's not happening, then we are breaking down. So it's good that we identify that. It's good that we acknowledge that. I actually used to be on sleep meds. I used to
Okay.
be on sleep meds, and I weaned myself off of them because I was doing so good. I've been struggling a bit with that lately, so I'm kind of watching that. I still have my meds. I didn't get rid of them,
Yes.
but I've not gone back on them. But that is very important. Sleep is extremely important to the entirety of the process, just to wellness in general. Um, but I'm watching that because if it continues, at any great pace, I am going to have to reach out to my sister Juliet and
Yes.
make a decision as to what I need to do. But
It's important because sleep does replenish your body just like nutrition. I mean, it is because there's something that bothers me, like when I would hear a lot of entertainers talk about their hustle mentality and they don't have to sleep because it's about making money and all of that. And I'm saying to myself, you have to be on drugs or something to be up, for hours on end without sleep, without proper rest. I think that's just a recipe for disaster. So I think we can't minimize the importance of sleep.
Oh no, you're absolutely right. And as you talk about the entertainers, I mean, not to judge everybody or paint anybody with a broad brush, but when you look at it, and if you, I don't know if you've ever watched the series, it's called Unsung, that tells you about all these, entertainers that you might not have heard about for a long time who just seem to have, vanished. The majority of them, as you just rightly say, end up on drugs.
Yeah.
That's what fuels them. That's what
Yeah.
keeps them going when they're not getting that rest, that well needed rest. And, it's a decision that we have to make, as we talked about earlier. What's important to you? Am I
Yes.
willing to give up my sleep to go make that money that I'm now going to have to turn around and use to repair my health that has been deteriorated because I didn't treat myself well? So it's a decision again that you have to make, right? Do
That
I
is that
hurt
is
myself
true.
to make it, then have to turn around and spend what I make to make myself whole again?
Yeah, I mean, I tell you, when I was younger, my partying days, I remember I would go out, hang out, go home, have to go to work, get an hour or two of sleep, and go to work and be miserable all day. And I'd always tell myself, I'll never do it again, but do it again a few days later. There's no way I could do that now.
Yeah.
There's no way I would even want to. It's like the value that I now place on sleep. I mean, the older you get, I think that's when you really come to appreciate how important rest is.
And it comes with whiz wise too, because when we are
Yes,
younger, we don't have the whiz wise that we have now, because we have not
so
experienced certain
true.
things. We don't learn, we don't know, we just do, and there is plenty out there encouraging us to do because it benefits them. There are people
Yes.
sleeping while we are there, drinking their liquor, smoking their drugs, and whatever else that we're doing, putting the money in their pockets while they're asleep and we're there partying.
That is so true, and that is an excellent point. My next question is: should parents teach their children about self-care?
Oh yeah, certainly they should. I believe they should. And I think know of the things that my grandmother, rest well mummy, used to say to me and my brothers, and I realize now that she was teaching us self-care. She probably wasn't clearly saying to us that, this is what I'm teaching you, or maybe she did, and we probably just didn't listen or hear, but like I said, now certain things are clearer. When you're
Yes.
younger, like, even if you hear it, to you it sounds like someone is just trying to dull your shine. Someone is trying to, take away your joy. Listen to what they're saying to you. Now you realize that, they were words of wisdom. So, my granny, rest well moving, she always used to say things to us like, if sick not cure, doctor no business. And to those of us who might not understand, the Jamaican vernacular, the part of there, what she's essentially saying, if you're not well and you don't tell somebody or go to the doctor, then you're on your own.
Yeah.
Because the doctor cannot help you if they don't know about what you're going through. So the way, when I think about that now and everything that we've been talking about, she might not have laid that out as clear to us to understand then, or we never understood it then as clear. But that is self-care. That
Yes.
is, if you don't look after yourself, nobody else will. And even those people who have the training, right, in the medical field, they don't know what to do to you unless you tell them what's wrong with you.
That's right.
Unless you have the ailment, unless you feel unwell and you turn to somebody to say, hey, I'm not well, they won't give you an x-ray, they won't give you an ekg, they won't give you a cat scan or whatever else they need to do to determine what's going on and then tell you what to do. So that is
That
self.
is true. That is so true. And let me ask you this. Would you consider like hygiene as a part of self-care?
Almost.
There are some people that they don't bathe on a regular basis, they don't take care of their skin, they don't wash their hair on a regular basis. How important is hygiene as far as self-care goes?
Well, I think it's really important. I don't know enough because I'm not, proficient in the medical field to say, hey, if you don't wash yourself for X amount of days or whatnot, it's going to cause you this illness or that illness or the other illness. I don't know that to be true, because I've seen a lot of my brothers and sisters who are not well, mentally. That they don't wash themselves, regularly. I don't know that that add anything additional to them from a physical standpoint in terms of, unwellness. What I do know is that, when you're not washing yourself and cleaning yourself, right, it makes you even feel bad about it,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So you feel depressed. You feel that lack of assurance, that self-assuredness. So you don't want to be around people, you don't want to look people in the eye, you don't want to speak too close to people, because you know that you're not clean.
Yes.
So in that regard, I will say yes, but in terms of how it physically affects persons, I don't know that it does or it doesn't. I'm not qualified to speak to that, so but I do know that it does dim your shine.
Definitely. And I think it would affect your self esteem. I think, especially as our skin is changing as we age, I think it is important to take care of our skin. It's important to just do whatever it takes to take care of ourselves. I'm not saying go out there and spend a ton of money on products,
Right.
but I do think it is important for us to take care of ourselves.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. Now, for someone who hasn't been practicing self care, do you have any suggestions on where to begin?
Yeah, I would say I would suggest that they start with what they put in our system, what we put in our system. That is the first place I would say, we start. Because we ingest a lot of poison, we call it food, drinks and information, and a lot of it is poisonous. They are abundant, easily accessible, cheap, and heavily marketed to us. If we stop putting those things in our bodies and our minds, we will start to see improvements in our health very soon thereafter. Exercise would be what I would suggest next. Um, Find an exercise that you love, not something that other people tell you to do, because you might find that burdensome.
Yes.
Become a task that you cannot complete or don't want to complete. You know, And I would also suggest, as we've been talking about, that they talk to a professional or a trusted friend. Share what challenges that they are having and be open to advice or help, to start or to maintain that self care. So those are the 3 areas that I would suggest, for someone to start. But I think we put a lot in our system just because it's out there, it's available, it's cheap, it's heavily marketed to us, that harms us. So identifying that, accepting that, acknowledging that, and say, hey, I'm putting the brakes on that is probably a good place to start.
How important would you say like reading food labels are? It's like I think reading food labels is very important because I think that a lot of people are not paying attention of what's in the food that they're taking in. So what you're saying makes total sense. I mean, if you're looking at the amount of sodium you're taking in, the amount of sugar, the amount of saturated fat, things of that nature. So would you advise viewers to take the time to read labels, to take the time because Andrew and I had a conversation recently. Andrew Green and I mentioned to him like if you go to England and you look at some of the same beverages that you see in this country, the color is different, the taste is different because in this country they're putting in dyes, they're putting in things that they would not be able to put in, in the food in England. So it's like I think it's important. We have to be our own advocate. I mean, what's your opinion?
Oh, 100%. My sister just came back from Greece too, and she's there walking every day. You're not in the group, but she's in the group posting her walking pictures every day. Like, I'm walking in Greece, I'm walking in Jamaica, she's walking everywhere. Even in the store, she's like, I'm in the store, but I'm walking,
Wow.
and I feel good about that. I feel good because I feel good for her because, I know her
Yes.
journey as well, struggle with, wellness. And, since she's been, kind of like doing some of the things that we're encouraging people to do, she's reported how much better she's doing, not even being on our meds anymore. But I do agree with that. One of the things she said to me is that the food over here is so different.
Yes.
It tastes like lobster, you know,
Yeah.
the food looks different. It tastes different.
Yes.
I will posit that, we probably should stay away from things that we have to be reading labels because
It's
it's
true.
doing processed things, and I just feel like the natural foods are just better. You buy a carrot, that's a carrot. You buy a broccoli, it's broccoli. Organic foods, callaloo is callaloo, aki is aki. And this is me because I'm vegan. So I'm going to speak from that perspective, right? And I know that not everybody's vegan, right? There was a point when I wasn't, it still doesn't mean that the food can't be natural, right? If you get in,
Well, but you still pay attention to what you're taking into your body,
well,
right?
definitely, definitely. And you mentioned the salt content, you mentioned the sugar content, you mentioned the dyes, the pesticides, right? Even the stuff they use to spray the food. Uh, I grew up and I remember my grandmother, rest well Mumi, she always put the fish out. She loves barra, right? And everybody's like, barracuda might be poisonous or whatnot. She always put it out. And if the flies don't pitch on it, she throws it away. So I'm thinking, wow. So if the animals don't want it or the insects don't, why should I be eating it? Right?
Right.
Because if it's poisonous to them, why is it not poisonous to me?
Right.
Spray our foods with all these poisons to kill bugs and whatever else we're spraying it to kill. It doesn't know the difference between them and us, right? If it's killing them, it's killing us too. That's the way I look at it.
That is so true. And I'd like to welcome Stephanie. She said, very timely conversation, all work and no play. She said, I am so guilty. Thank you for tuning in. Yeah, nutrition is is very important, because if you consume too much of certain things, you feel sluggish. It affects your energy level.
Mhm.
It's like you're not as productive. I think back to living in Jamaica, and I remember the food we would eat there, and it was like it was very good food. You could taste the difference in the food, but the nutritional value of it also. Let's talk about that.
Listen, another one of the books that I've read along my journey is this one. It's called The Blue Zones Challenge, right?
I have that. I have that.
The
Yes.
minute I think I got through the first chapter before I stopped and start sharing this with everybody, like, you got to get this book, right? I actually met one of the guys who is in the team that conduct these studies. One of our functions, I think, was last year. Um, we sat together. It was the main speaker, and it's funny that my sister talked about her trip to Greece because Greece, one of the blue zones is in Greece, right? It's
Yes.
in Costa Rica, one is here in California, one is in Japan, and one is in Sardinia, Italy, right? And one of the common themes that you find in these zones is the way people eat, right?
Yes.
And they eat a plant slant diet, not necessarily a plant based diet, but plant slant.
Right.
It's mostly plant based, right? They do eat, meat, mostly for celebratory occasions, you know, but they mostly farm these foods themselves. It's natural foods that's being farmed, and they are farming it themselves, so they're active doing the farming. They're in and out of their garden. They're in a community with each other, whether they're religious communities or bingo or whatnot. They keep the young kids around them. The old people keep the young kids around them, so knowledge is
Yes.
being shared, knowledge is being spread and passed on. And these people are on average living healthy lives to 100 years or and older.
Yes.
And there's that commonality among them. So I I don't know who I am to say that there is not something there.
I mean, that's the truth. I remember back in the past when they would laugh at people for using coconut oil on their skin,
Mhm.
because it was about lotion. And now coconut oil is the thing.
Yep.
It's like, think about it. So, you know, I think a lot of people are going back to the natural ways. I remember my grandma, she used to have a rum bottle of this. It looked like some kind of oil, but that's what she would use in her hair. And she had the most beautiful hair. It
Right.
was something that she made herself.
And when you think about it, right, all these our grandmothers, right? I listened to this debate between two doctors, and I don't remember the name. It was such a long time, right? When I lived
Yes.
in New York and used to listen to this radio program called Democracy Now with Amy Goodman and you know wow, I forgot the name of the radio station now, but there was one traditional doctor and one natural homeopathic doctor, both having a healthy debate, and they're going back and forth, and The homeopathic doctor stopped one time and says, "Listen, listen, listen. Let's stop. We both know what's going on here. Somebody walks into your clinic, you got to give them something, all right? You can't just send them back out without a diagnosis. That's how you get paid, right?" And he said, "Anybody who's listening to me, listen. If you grew up and see your grandmother using it, and she says she's using it because her mom used it, and her mom used it because her mom used it, use it, right?
Great advice.
Just think about the Rasta brethren that you know from you were young.
Yeah.
They ate naturally.
I remember they weren't having salt. They were not eating, it was the ITIL food, right?
Mhm.
And I say to myself, they were ahead of their time
Right?
because now people are understanding why they did that.
Right? And not even were they ahead of their time, right? People used to have us feel like something was wrong with them, like
Yeah,
they were doing something wrong, like they didn't know what they were doing.
right.
Right? My sister Juliet reminds me when I was talking about the blue zones with her at first time, and I mentioned the rest of her, and so she's like, "Yeah, the Seventh Day Adventists live that same way too."
That's the same. Yeah, I was going to mention that because we
You
do
know,
we have our 8 laws of health. Most Adventists are vegan. That's the lot. I don't know if you've ever read Back to Eden.
I don't believe I have. No.
Okay, that's another good book. But the whole blue zone thing, it's like it's I don't think people really understand, like, to live a healthy life, it's really not that
Oh
complicated.
no, it's not. It's not. It's simple. And the blue zone that exists in this country in California, it's a
It's a
seven.
Seventh-day Adventist community, Loma Linda.
Yeah.
A few years back, they opened a McDonald's in that community. It was actually on the news. They
Oh,
went berserk. They were like, we don't want that in our community.
that's
And
right.
I mean, I will never forget how angry those guys were, but it's like, I get it. To have a blue zone in the United States, think about it,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
That is really something. But yeah, you know what? I have the book, that Blue Zone book you have, and I've just not read it yet. I have so many books that I'm reading. But I don't want us to close this out without addressing water. That's an area where I struggle. I don't like the taste of water. But how important is water to self-care?
You know what? I'm going to say this, right? Water is in everything, right?
Yes.
So they say that the earth is 71% water. No, I think the water has 29% earth in it. You can't be consist of 71% of something, and that's not what you are, right? Um, our body is 55 to 65% water, right? Our body, 55 to 60% of this structure is water. 75% of our brain is water, right? 75% of our muscles is water. 79% of your heart is water. 22% of your bones, these are structures, 22% of that is water. If that doesn't clearly state how important water is to our survival, I don't know how we can paint the picture, right? So I think it's critical to self care, right? Even including cleaning ourselves, as we talked about earlier,
Yes.
right? Making us look better and feeling better about ourselves, right? Water is that essential. When, like, even on my run this morning, like I said, 3.9 miles in, I had to stop. And even when I stopped, caught my breath, felt okay, it's time to move on again. I had to go into a gas station across the street, and I begged the guy for some water. Like, let me have a bottle of water. I'll come back and pay you. And he goes, "No, I can't." He led me to a fountain outside. Like, go and drink from the fountain.
Okay.
It was grimy and dirty, but I was getting ready to drink from it because I needed the water.
Yeah.
A lady was there on the pump filling her gas. She offered to buy me the water, and she bought me
Oh,
two
that's
bottles of water.
nice.
And then I was able to continue onto my journey. But water is essentially the most important thing. Uh, you could put a seed in water and it grows. If you put the seed in the earth and don't water it, it won't grow. Everything, the base of everything is water.
Yes.
So water is, I have water here, free, and you know what I do? I put lemon in it.
Yes.
I put lemon in it to the point where drinking water without lemon now don't even taste
Right.
it to me anymore.
Right.
But I'm saying we cannot do without water. When you go to the hospital or any place, the first thing they do is stick an IV in you to hydrate you.
Yes.
So if we hydrate ourselves, we are well on our way to doing good by ourselves by
Yes.
hydrating ourselves. So water is extremely important.
Tell the viewers, what happens if we're not taking in enough water?
Well, we'll just wither and die. We literally will just wither and die because you're going to get sick. You're going to
Yes.
get, if all these things that I just mentioned, your brain being 78% water, your heart being 78% water, your muscles being 58% water, your bones being 28% water. Like imagine if those things aren't replenished, you're not sustaining that with water. Just think about it. All right. And you don't have to take my word for it. Like I'm not
No,
a medical
no,
professional.
what you're saying is true because I've done reading on it, and I've read where it talks about how the aches and pains that you're feeling sometimes, you know, things like that can be from dehydration
Dehydration.
when your
Yep.
body's not getting
Migraine.
enough. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah,
Migraine headaches. I used to struggle with those
yeah,
a lot, intense, right? And hydration. Hydration helps.
yes,
Hydration. Your skin. You talk about your skin, right? Looking after
yes,
your skin, right? When you don't drink enough water, your skin starts to look dry and
it's
wrinkled.
true,
You glow when you drink water. You look
it's
nice and
true.
plump, right? So water is definitely
It's true.
extremely.
I mean, I know that you will when the fatigue that you'll feel from the lack of water. So it's definitely vital, and that's an area, like I said, where I struggle, but it's an area where I intend to work on it because I know when I do drink the water, it's like I can literally feel my body thanking me for it because I do feel the difference.
You know what you said, though, Brian, is important. I'm working on it because I don't want people to ever feel like if I'm not there now, that's it.
Right.
You're working on
Great
it. As
point.
Queen Sister Juliet always say, one more step. It's a journey. And we are all taking the journey on our own time, on our own pace, and we'll get there on our time. We always want to start at the end. We have
Yes,
to
we
start
do.
at the
It's
beginning
true.
to go the entirety of the course. And just be patient and kind and gentle with ourselves. My Queen Bridget always say that: be gentle with yourself. Don't beat up on yourself. You're not there yet doesn't mean that you're not on your way
And you
there.
won't get there. Exactly, exactly, exactly. Well, I can tell you that I have really enjoyed this conversation. And I would like to say to the viewers who watch the replay, please feel free to post your questions and comments. If you'd like to ask Richie about his Wednesday, the Wellness Check Wednesday, please feel free to reach out. Richie, Emperor, do you have any closing thoughts?
Oh, definitely. As you just mentioned, my YouTube channel is called It's All Up to Me. I post content there, my exercise, my nutrition preparation, short videos, long videos. I post some of my stories there. You guys could check that out, if you'd so like. And as Queen Bree says, I mean, reach out if you would like to be a part of my Wellness Wednesday check.
Yes.
Spectacular. It's just something, that we do regularly just to check in with each other and make sure that everybody's okay. I would also like to um, say, and I think this is a valuable piece of advice that I got from my Queen Sister Juliet Nelson again. You know, as I just said, take one more step. She points out to me that it is not linear and that it won't last forever. And
Yes.
that's not even the happy moments, right? Everything has an end point. So when we accept that, we can navigate with much more assurance, right? And I would also like to share the wise words of my king brother Robert Barnes, who got me this wonderful shirt, right? Mental Health Matters. Right? He ran 6 miles, walked 6 miles in my honor to get me this shirt. And I appreciate him so very much, right? But he reminds us that nothing happens to us without the permission of our mind, right? Your mind gives you the permission to feel bad or sad, right? If you meditate on those thoughts. Likewise, it gives you the permission to feel happy and good about yourself if you meditate those thoughts. And also that no one has the power to make you feel any way that you do not allow them the permission to feel. to do, right? No matter what they say or how they say it, where they say it, or who they say it to. If you don't give them the permission to make you feel bad about it, you can't. My journey has led me to realize and accept that I'm really surrounded by great kings and queens who are capable and ready to help when needed. My brothers, my Queen Bridget Barnes, who I just mentioned, my coach Dandy, my sister, you, Bree, my brother Penny and his beautiful wife, Queen Sister Juliet, my brethren Mosiah, Chin, Novelet, Marcus, bigger than his queen, Moyen, and the list goes on. The point I'm making is that we all have real life angels, in
Yes.
our circle who are ready to show up and put out for us, you know, as a part of our self care. It is knowing that and letting them give you the strength when you cannot be strong alone. Those are my closing thoughts. Just remember that, know that.
Amen to that. Amen to that.
Practice love.
I just appreciate this conversation so much. I mentioned to you earlier that I struggled with the thought of turning 62, but it's what you said, it's up to me. It's up to me. What am I going to do? Am I going to just sit back and, oh, I'm 62, or am I going to do my part to be my very best? So I would like to encourage the viewers out there to, it's one day at a time. Like you said, Richie, it's not about the end, it's where you start. Just take the journey for what it is, one day at a time. Think about your community, your circle of friends, and I would just say, never give up, keep trying. Never be afraid to reach out if you need to a trusted friend, a therapist, but there has to be someone that you can reach out to. But please have enough love for yourself to engage in this journey of self-care. And I asked the emperor earlier, would he come back so we could talk about self-love? So we'll be touching on that topic when he comes back, and I'm really looking forward to that conversation.
I'm looking forward to being back and having that discussion with you and the
Thank you. Thank you, little brother. I really appreciate this. And to the viewers, I'm wishing everyone a blessed week. Take care, and thank you for tuning